Hey guys, welcome back to another video. We are continuing with the budget guides, or just guides in general, I guess, for that matter. This time we are covering the Fortis Colosseum. I swear to God, I've been grinding this content non-stop since release, and it pisses me off so much. I've done over 640 waves so far. I have almost 100 deaths here, so at least roughly between 120 to 150 attempts at this point, okay? I've researched multiple different methods on how to solve all the waves, okay? Different tiles, plugins, whatever, okay? I've seen so many different methods from different YouTubers, streamers, whatever, that at this point, I've basically condensed everything I've learned into a very simple, very easy to learn method on how to beat at least the waves on the Colosseum. A guide on the boss would be an entirely separate video once I can actually beat the boss. Okay, I still can't beat the fucking boss, but I can consistently beat the waves now, which at the very least is what I'm here to teach you guys. For the record, you do not need 5 bill worth in gear in order to beat the Colosseum. You do not need, okay, to be a crazy top 1% PVMer. Just for the record, I have not beaten Inferno. I do not have a Zuck helmet, okay? I'm not a Grandmaster player. I'm shit, absolute dog shit at prayer flicking. Everything that you think you might need to know in order to do this endgame high level piece of content, throw it out the window because it's not true. Literally anybody can do this piece of content. Anybody. Anyways, for this method, you're going to primarily be focusing on magic and melee. Melee is pretty much only used for 2 scenarios, unless you're bringing Guthans, okay, for healing. You're only using melee for the boss. The second reason why we're bringing melee, it's very useful to bring some sort of tanking armor, because every once in a while, especially if our RNG ends up being shit on how the NPCs spawn, because it's a little random on how they spawn to a degree, having some sort of tanking armor, or more specifically, as much ranged defense as possible, is very useful when transitioning between pillars. So a more high budget setup, for example, in my instance, this is what I typically run in my setups these days, simply because, well, I have the gear, so why not? I run basically full mage. I have a Kodai wand. You don't need a Kodai wand. A blood scepter works just fine. For my melee gear or my tanking gear, I do have full Torva, as well as I have a Din's Bulwark. Din's Bulwark is absolutely amazing for tanking purposes. If you happen to have one, bring it. If you don't have one, however, you can replace the Din's Bulwark with a crystal shield instead. You don't even need to be wearing a weapon along with it. Just bring the shield. Torva, you don't need Torva. I just happen to have Torva. The more budget version of tanking armor for melee is Justiciar. Justiciar has almost the exact same range defense as Torva. Torva just has better DPS. That is it. Okay. In terms of tanking, though, which is all you really need to care about, Justiciar works just fine. Even Bandos works just fine. All you need to prioritize is your range defense. I would even say that when I was first learning the waves, and it's still really good right now too. Let's say you're an Iron Man who wants to do this. Full Guthans is actually really fucking good here. Why? Because the range defense is actually not that different from Justiciar and Torva. So like, for example, full Torva is at 340 right now. Okay, full Guthans is at 315. It's not that big of a difference. Barrow's gear is really good for tanking here. If you're going budget, full Guthans is the way to go. 100%. Full Guthans. We'll even use it for the video here just to kind of show you that, like, you don't really need too much stuff. You don't need insane gear. In terms of my mage gear, unfortunately, I don't own cheaper mage gear. You can just bring the best mage gear you want. The more budget your gear, I would highly recommend that you increase your prayer bonus as much as possible. Because my fights are longer, that means I end up having to pray longer. You're going to end up bringing a lot of prayer restoration. So being able to make your prayer last as long as possible really helps out in the long run. Obviously, just bring the best you have. That's just the main thing you want to look at. prayer bonus, and range defense for tanking. That is pretty much it. And then everything else, just bring the best of whatever you got. In terms of my main source of DPS, normally I use the Shadow as my main source of DPS. Obviously, not everyone's going to have a Shadow, in which case, just bring your best powered staff in this case. I don't really own a Shrine of the Swamp right now, so I'm just going to use an Accursed Scepter, which honestly is only like 3 mil right now. I would say that's pretty budget. That's kind of it. I am on ancient spells. Ice and blood spells are the primary things you want to bring. So long story short, there's a few different colors of tiles that I have laid out. All right. The green tiles, those are where the enemies spawn. Okay. And the way that the Colosseum works is that enemies will not spawn within 4 tiles of you, okay? Which is why I have these little X's on these 3 green tiles right here. The core basis of the method, most people will say to basically stand right here at the beginning of each wave. After the NPC spawn, you move to the center of this pillar. So that way they end up getting trapped behind this pillar. And they can kind of 1v1 them more or less each time. So at the beginning of each wave, before I talk to the dude to start the wave, I have my spellbook open. I have my quick prayer set to protect from magic and augury. Okay. If you don't have augury, you can do mystic might as well. That's just fine. Then what we're going to do is we're going to wait 4 ticks. And then on the 5th tick, we're going to move to this pillar. Now, I probably lost some of you right there because honestly, anything to do with like ticks and prayer flicking, being tick perfect and whatnot, it already turns me off and makes me think it's not a casual player thing. It is, I promise you, and I'm going to show you how it is because I made it so it's casual. And this is how you do it. Go ahead and download the Visual Metronome plugin. Okay, Visual Metronome. This right here makes it so easy to do this. Put that on, enable it, okay, and then right here have show metronome tick number enabled. Okay, have that enabled. It makes it so that this box pops up. This shows the ticks. From here, I would highly recommend you, in the visual metronome settings, put the tick count to 5. That way it makes it really damn easy to just count along with the ticks. So that way you can see, oh hey, once the number hits 5, click on the pillar. That is it. It's very easy. Okay. So just to kind of show this off, right? We're going to have our spellbook open. I'm going to turn on my quick prayers. Okay. I'm going to talk to the dude. As soon as I click continue, I'm going to wait 4 ticks. Then on the 5th tick, click behind the pillar. Okay. Then from there, I'm going to cast my ice spell. I'm going to cast Ice Barrage or whatever your best ice AoE spell is on the ranger. Why? Because what ends up happening is when you're over here, get behind the pillar. As soon as I'm able to target the ranger, click on him so that they freeze right here. And then I can click immediately to number 2 tile. Okay. That's what these 3 tiles are here for. The 1, 2, and 3. It's just for the beginning of the wave when I'm freezing the Fremenix. Okay. With that being said, this number 2 tile is just far away enough that if you choose to have the volatility, the explosion modifier enabled, you will always be far enough away from the Fremenix when they're frozen right here. So even if you forget about the explosion, you'll be safe. And then I have the 3rd tile right here just as an extra moving spot in case I fuck up or something. I'm gonna go ahead and showcase this on wave 1. Have my spellbook open, enable my quick prayers, the protect magic and augury, or whatever your best magic prayer it is. Start the wave. I'm going to choose blasphemy. Blasphemy is by far the best one to start off on. Do blasphemy. Boom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're coming. I'm waiting for the Fremenix to get in line of sight. There he is. Immediately move to the next tile. Notice how I'm not getting hit. Just start casting AoE spells on them. Boom. Dead. If I want to, I can put on my powered staff and kill the ranger. Easy. Notice how the NPC got stuck behind this pillar? That is it. Now, something worth noting is that after the first 40 seconds of every single wave, reinforcements are going to arrive. So, boom, there's reinforcements. How do you know when the first 40 seconds are coming? Well, if you download Colosseum plugin, there's a new Fortis Colosseum plugin now. Download that. Okay. Basically have almost everything enabled. I also have so that the waves overlay displayed, have it on both. That plugin also makes it so that you can see how much time has passed in your current wave. So if you don't know when the 40-second mark is going to pop up for reinforcements, just take a look at that. Be like, oh, hey, it's almost 40 seconds. Reinforcement about to arrive. I can start preparing now if I need to. But that being said, the solves of this are pretty easy. For any of you that happen to be new to PVM, there's a few things that will help out. First of all, is going to be the better NPC highlight plugin. This is very, very useful. That's why my enemies right here, they're highlighted in different colors. It shows me their hitbox, so like better NPC highlight. Okay, I have it so that their true tile is enabled. You see how the meleeer right here has a box in the southwestern corner of their square, of their 2x2 square. That is their true tile. The way that RuneScape works is that characters will always try to get to you based on where their true tile is. Okay, so for example, because his true tile sees me, he's not going to try to get around the corner anymore to try and hit me. He's basically stuck running against the wall, in this case the pillar, and he's trapped. That's how you can manipulate a lot of the NPCs for the Colosseum and also the Inferno. So because I have him trapped now, all I have to do is just kill him. Quite honestly, this is like 90% of Colosseum. It's just safe spotting almost every single NPC and just killing them. That is it. It's just simply knowing how to safe spot them. That's the only thing that you need to figure out and need to know. All right, now that this wave is over, I'm making sure I stand on my starting tile. That's something I want to try and accomplish every single time. So, like we said before, we are starting a new wave. We're on our starting tile. I'm going to put on my mage gear, opening my spellbook so I can have my ice spells ready. I'm going to see what invocations I want. Your rule of thumb when picking invocations is simply, if you see an invocation that you like, that you have not picked yet, take it, okay? What I would highly recommend though, there are invocations that can be leveled up 3 times, levels 1, 2, and 3. What I would highly recommend is that you only take invocations, if possible, that you don't mind leveling up to at least level 2. If you follow my guide here and you use the type of solves that I showcase in this video, there's at least 3 invocations. There's multiple invocations that are quote unquote free for you. Go check out my invocation tier list if you're interested in that. Oh, by the way, if you wanted to know how to get your better NPC highlight different colors, all you have to do after you click tag all on the different enemies. After you tag them, just shift right click tag color, and you can choose a color to set them to. I like to set them to a color that corresponds to their attack style. So green with range, magic with blue, red with melee. And then I like to color the manticore as purple so I know it's multiple combat styles. Now, right here, this is so useful, okay? Highly recommend every single one of you download a plugin called Line of Sight. This makes it, I'm gonna enable it, set it to range of 10, okay? This makes it so that you can see visually where you can actually attack without having to move. This is crucial because there is a modifier called Myopia in the Colosseum, which reduces your attack range. If I had Myopia 1 enabled, I would have 2 less tiles. So I would go from 10 tiles I can attack from to 8 tiles I can attack from. And without this plugin enabled, you may not be entirely sure whether or not this shaman, for example, is actually in range. And what would end up happening is you would try to attack him and you would accidentally get pulled out from safety and get hit by a bunch of people just because you didn't know they weren't in range. Highly recommend. And just to showcase this, okay, let me put it back on. You can see right now that with my normal range, the shaman's attackable. So I can click on him. I can attack him, okay? However, with Myopia 1, if I had my open 1 down, he would barely not be enraged. And this is what I was talking about. I would end up being dragged out in order to attack him. Especially if you end up with Myopia 2 and 3, where you end up going from 8 to 6 and 4 attack range. Here are some key tips that really help you out, okay? One thing that I always like to do is step on this far left part of the pillar. You see how he came down? That was because I was no longer in his line of sight. So, for example, why is dragging him useful? Well, let's say I have Myopia 3 enabled, and I'm down to 4 tiles to attack from, okay? I wouldn't have been able to attack him where he previously was. So standing on this left corner drags him in and pretty much guarantees that almost every single NPC, or at least the large NPCs, guarantees every large NPC is attackable from this right side of the pillar. Every single one. The only exception is the shaman. The shaman, just like right now, as you can see, would be the only one I cannot attack from this range if I have Myopia 3 enabled. So that's where the auto cast of spells come in. Because at least as of right now, you can attack pretty much from any range using auto cast spells. Now next week, they're planning to change it so you can't auto cast from any distance anymore, in which case once that gets enabled, you're going to have to manual cast from this distance every single time. It's not a big deal, it's just a little bit more annoying, but it's still at least doable. At least you're not taking damage, at least you're clearing the wave. The DPS is a bit poor. That's why again, I like to bring prayer bonus for my gear, so that way I don't have to worry about running out of pots so quickly. There's a few things that you should know, starting from wave 3 and onwards. Sometimes NPCs will spawn on tiles A and B, okay? A and B are the only tile spawns that can potentially mess you up. So what do you do in those situations? Well, if it's only just one NPC that spawns there, it's easy, okay? All you have, as long as you freeze the Fremenix and you burst AoE burst them down like I showed you before, all you have to do is just pray against whatever NPC spawns on A or B, okay? Every once in a while you'll just end up in a bad situation where where two NPCs of different attack styles will spawn right here and they'll try and attack you at the same time. Basically, long story short, when you're over here setting up, as long as you wait for these guys on tiles A and B to come a little closer so that are more towards the middle of the pillars before you book it to the south pillar, you'll trap everybody in this middle pillar. If you follow everything I've been showing you so far, volatility is a free modifier. Okay, you can literally take volatility all the way up to level 3, and it should not affect you if you follow it properly. Okay, so from here we have a few people left. So there's a few things I want to explain here that are very useful. You see this big blue square that's enabled? That's actually the attack range of the Serpent Shaman, the small major. So the way you set this up is that if you download the Radius Markers plugin, this one right here, open it up, go ahead and select it on the right hand side, make a new one called Add New Radius Marker. You can title it Serpent Shaman. Make sure the NPC ID is 12811. From there, go ahead and disable all of these eyes up front. The only one you need is this bottom one. Change it to magic. Change the color to whatever color you want. I have it blue to correspond with its color. Then set the number to 10. This 10 is the attack range, okay? Make sure the eyeball is enabled. It's open. Anyways, there's a few different ways we can go about this. Like I said before, I can go all the way out of range of the shaman and just attack the ranger from a distance. Move out of the way. I can just attack the ranger out of distance, and I can just kill the ranger after the ranger's dead. Kill the major. 1v1. Okay, so from here on out, we're pretty much going to start going over 6 simple solves that you can use to solve pretty much any wave in the Colosseum. The first method I call the Swerve method. It's also been called the L method, the corner method. There's various names. I call it Swerve just because it's easier to label the tile for it. The swerve method you only want to use when there's 2 people behind the pillar. Go ahead and stand at the top of the pillar corner. Wait for the enemies to line up with you on the other side. Then go ahead and pray against whoever is second in line. From there, click on the tile that I have labeled as Swerve. What ends up happening is that the person in the front kind of ends up getting stuck and also doesn't have line of sight of you, even though they are facing your direction. They're kind of like a deer in headlights. They just end up standing there not doing anything, which lets you be able to just 1v1 from a distance whoever is in the back. Once the person in the back is dead, they can kill the person in the front. Keep in mind though that this method does not work if you have the Solarflare modifier enabled or if there is a Javelin Colossus in the back of the line. This is because the Javelin Colossus will, every 5 attacks, will throw a javelin that you have to move away from. The moment that you move off of the swerve tile, whoever's in the front of the line will be able to see you for at least 1 tick and will hit you with an attack. So because of that, anything that forces you to move away from the swerve tile that I have listed is going to cause you to take some damage. The second solve is pretty simple and is pretty much going to be your emergency escape plan if you ever feel overwhelmed. Every once in a while, if you end up getting bad spawns, such as like having both a major and a ranger on tiles A and B, you might end up in some situations where you just have too many people attacking you from different directions. You just feel overwhelmed and you have to react quickly, otherwise you're going to die. In these type of situations, the best plan of attack is to just run to a different pillar. Put on your best tank gear, pray against the hardest hitting people attacking you, and just run to a different pillar. 90% of the time, this will end up solving the wave. On rare occasions, you might have to run to 2 or even 3 pillars. As long as you keep running to a different pillar, sooner or later, the wave will solve itself. For the wiggle method, this only works for the first like 6 to 7 waves, and it only applies to the small major, the Serpent Shaman. Essentially, while you're hiding behind the pillar, as long as you're standing on one of the west side pillars, you can kind of move back and forth 2 tiles behind the pillar to essentially kind of force the NPCs to move around, and sometimes the shaman will just end up sliding right up to the front into a different spot. Majority of the time, this ends up kind of dislocating everybody just enough where you can start picking them off one by one. For this method, it's pretty simple. It's a variation of running between pillars. However, you have to do it in a very particular way. This method works whenever you have 2 rows of enemies with at least one of the rows having a stack of 2. What you need to do is stand in the very center of the pillar, put on your best tank gear, and then click on the 2+1 tile that I have listed on the south pillar. This will automatically split them up, and you can choose which side of the pillar you would like to pick them off from. For solving stacks of 3, the method is pretty much identical to the 2+1 method. Stand in the middle of the pillar, put on your best tank armor, pray against the hardest hitting people in the back, and then click on the 3 stack tile that I have set. The only thing you have to keep in mind, you want to make sure you step behind the pillar just a few tiles before they actually reach the pillar. That way, at least one of them will slide off and reach you so you can 1v1 them. If you don't step behind the pillar in time, all 3 of them will just end up stuck behind the pillar again, and then you kind of have to do it all over again. For 2 stacks, it's pretty simple. If you end up in a situation where you're not able to use the swerve method, you can go ahead and just run to a different pillar. One of them will get stuck behind the pillar while the other one should just slide off and come to 1v1 you naturally. This is very useful if you have the Solarflare modifier enabled, or there's a ranger in the back of the line. Both Solarflare and the ranger will prevent you from using the swerve method, so you can use this method instead. Basically just run to a different pillar. Alright, that's pretty much it for today's video, guys. I hope that helped a lot. If you enjoyed the video and found it helpful, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. I'm continuously putting out guides and stuff whenever I have free time. If there's anything about the Colosseum in particular that you would like help with, Go ahead and let me know in the comment section down below as well. I'll probably end up making some more guides for maybe different playstyles and whatnot, but I would need to know what you guys would be interested in. I do have a Discord server as well, so if you ever have questions, you're more than welcome to just stop on by and ask away. Other than that though, I will see you guys in the next video and hope you have a good one. Peace.